So yes, I met I met Tapley Holland at the Autism Healthcare Symposium down in San Antonio, Texas, where he gave a presentation on TruDOSE, and they were there doing it. Unfortunately, Keegan wasn't there to do his first dose there, but learning so much about it, there was just something about it that was pulling me to say, like, you need to try this. And I think within 2 weeks, he told me to go to see Dr. Briner in Connecticut, and within 2 weeks I was there, and he happened to be there, and he turned around, he said, I remember you. We were just talking. I said, I get things done. So I was definitely interested in learning about how TruDOSE works and watching it work and seeing how it could help our kids was really, really just, amazing. And I'm hoping that we can do more research on it and really get this out in the autism world. So I don't know if one of you want to start speaking, but I want to turn it over to both of you. And just I would love to hear more from Mr. Holland about how TruDOSE got started, what it actually is, and how it could potentially help our kids with autism.
Hi, Greer. Doc Briner here, everyone. Good to see you. My buddy Tapley there, I see. Um, I just wanted to thank you for hosting this for everyone out there. And one of the reasons that I was interested in TruDOSE, and I had been doing some things with platelet-rich plasma and PRP, specifically for the brain, for a few years before I met Tapley. But once I saw what he was doing, it all clicked. The way he did it, what the system that he created, and it just made sense. So I'm going to let him kind of take the lead on this, because I mean, we're seeing such great results with a variety of different types of patient populations. Here we're talking about autism, but we're seeing other neurological conditions be helped. People with autoimmune diseases, people with Lyme disease, and the like. But you're going to start understanding that platelet-rich plasma (PRP) is a lot more, I would say, complex and nuanced than people might have thought. So platelets aren't just this clotting organ cell thing that we talk about. Someone goes to the hospital and you say, oh, they got to get a platelet infusion or something. It's very different. And what Tapley's tapped into is pretty profound. And it's the body healing itself. And I think that's the real key. So if your kid has been, has something on the spectrum, or you or yourself are just trying to improve your health, this is something that can really do it, and it's your own body doing it. So, Tap, why don't you tell people a little bit about what I found so interesting with, with your amazing discovery?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, considering the crowd that I'm talking to, I would almost be remiss if I didn't tell you the truth on how this was discovered. Even though I have a background in stem cells, it's what I've been doing for the past, close to 20 years. I don't have a formal background in it, but people ask me, I'm not a biochemist, but I have a photographic memory. So when I got into the stem cell industry, anything that I can read, I can catalog, which made me really effective at my job. And I got to see these stem cell therapies obviously do marvelous things, with different applications. But also, I just started asking the question, why does it work for some people and why does it not work for other people? Right? Because if we can all agree that we were created with the ability that our body is capable of healing itself, then why have we yet to untap the potential of what these therapies could potentially do? So, considering the crowd that I'm talking to, and I don't talk about this really anymore, the TruDOSE starts because of the product and the software that I created. Before we even get to the therapy, prior to the therapy, there was this dream that was downloaded to me. In this dream, the intelligence, which I have zero background in software, to create this software to basically solve this problem of dosing and accuracy within the field of regenerative medicine. What does that mean? It means that we've never thought about these therapies in terms of dosing. We just do the same thing to everybody. and we expect everybody to have the same outcome result, but we don't. And this is how the literature has been stated. This is how we do it every day, whether you go to Panama or you use platelet-rich plasma, umbilical cord. None of these therapies have really been thought that, maybe there's a dose that leads to the shoulder to being healed. Maybe there's a dose to, helping people with autism. No one's ever thought about it like that. So one night I was downloaded this intelligence. I woke up the next morning and told my wife, I think I'm supposed to create this software. So I basically felt so convicted that I acted on it. And, even though I was compelled to do this, nothing was really going to basically force me into quitting the comfortable job that I had, and really just the comfort of life that I had at the time, until my fifth child went to the doctor one day when he was 2 years old, and the next, had his checkup, had his routine shots, and the next morning he wasn't even the same kid anymore. Many of you probably can relate, that he was banging he screamed all through the night. By the next afternoon, a kid who could walk, could talk, was basically more verbal than any of our other four kids, was basically lying on his back and didn't even know who we were. So it was at that point that I was compelled to basically figure this out, to start this company and to create this software, which I had no idea it would lead to what we're talking about right now. I started the company, and basically 8 months into it, after solving problems that are simple with blood-related therapies, because I said, if I'm going to have this software that solves all these complex things, then I have to start with the most simplest thing, because to get people on a progressional path that, okay, it works for blood, then I would advance to stem cells and beyond and solve those problems. So I started with platelets and platelet-rich plasma because it's easily understandable, and there's more than thousands of articles that are published on its safety and efficacy. Never did I, in my wildest dreams, think that 8 months later, as I was sitting in the airport, I called my wife and I said, in a very similar way, in how that I came, the software came to me, the same kind of inspiration came to me for the IV therapy. I called my wife. I said, I think I know how we're going to heal our son. She said, okay, I've got to try it first, because that's how autism moms work. Anything that I'm going to do to my son and my daughter, I have to try first. So what would my dad say? And her dad is a doctor. He's a medical doctor. He's traditionally Western trained. And I said, well, I think that he would totally be 100% against it out of the gate. There's no way he would do this. But to me, it doesn't make sense. It actually, doing this to you makes perfect sense. I finally showed him enough evidence that I could find that would demonstrate that this therapy would be safe, that it wouldn't harm his daughter. And the next morning we woke up after giving it to her, and it did all these remarkable things to her that it's too long to list on this Zoom call. The second patient was my second child, who was borderline dyslexic. And because at this time I hadn't really put two and two together of even though it did all these remarkable things to my wife, it did everything I thought it would do, but it did more. And I didn't have an understanding of what it was doing just yet. The second person was my second child. And to make a long story short, she went from basically being borderline dyslexic to excelling at reading, to excelling at academics, to excelling at many things. And then it hit me. Oh my gosh, what did I just tap into for the brain? And for the next basically 2 years, I went into basically a mode of, I need to figure this out. I'll call it research. Patients started coming to my father-in-law's office with conditions that I had no idea what they were. Lupus, end-stage kidney disease, autism, dementia, you name it. When I emerged from that, which was almost pre-COVID, I basically in my head thought to myself, this could help a lot of people with a lot of things. And even though I knew it would help autism, I knew that I could not basically go out and tell everybody that this would potentially help their child. I had to be invited into that sphere. So I've been very careful and to let this kind of sink roots and let people tell people, just the same way that we've become educated about a lot of things in the world today, that one person tells another, and if it's true and if it works, then it would grow legs, and basically I would still be here today. And so you flash forward to today, close to 14,000 plus patients later. If we're talking about autism, I can say this is the one thing that is going to heal these kids. Is that a good kind of?
Yeah. So no, I mean, I didn't know that full story. So thank you for sharing. I mean, I think a lot of people can resonate with, losing their kid during a certain time. That was our story too. My son was developing normally and then regressed right before my eyes. And I was Western medicine trained. And I'm sure Dr. Briner can attest for when you're Western medicine trained, it's very hard to remove those blinders to what you're seeing. And you're still holding on to that faith that this is just normal. This is just the way that it's supposed to be, that you were ingrained to think that. So I remember you speaking and I remember you talking about your daughter and and how much it improved her, dyslexia and her reading. And that's what I think really, I remember, I think my friend Taryn is on. I was sitting next to her at the time and I said, I'm doing this. Like this, like there was just something about you that when you were speaking, it just like it was like a hitting a nail on the head for me. So I'd love for you to kind of explain how PRP actually works, a little bit of the science as basic as you can for everybody, of how it actually kind of what we're doing. You're taking the blood, you're spinning it, you're taking the platelets and re-injecting it. How does that actually transpire into helping to heal parts of the body?
Dealing
Yeah,
with how long after after the injury can
yeah.
you heal. And I'm just going to give you a blanket statement, not specifically about TruDOSE, but about my work with neurological conditions, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, um, and neurostimulation, neurofeedback that I've been doing for decades now. And when you have an injury, uh, and you think, well, it's been too long, it's too late. Um, that's very old school idea in neurology. We can change things, and you can change them even years later. So we can talk a little bit about
Yeah, Keegan's 10.
yes,
We just
yeah,
started doing it
right,
back, I think when he just turned 10, and we've done 2 doses so far, with you guys. And, I always say it's never too late to act
correct.
on improving the brain. Remember, there's gonna be a big brain jump by the time your child hits 14 too. So what you also want to do everything you can before these big brain jumps, which is usually between 18 to 22 months, 4 years old and 14. So if we can do whatever we can before these big brain jumps, it does help.
Absolutely. And I'll say it can even help later too. So don't give up hope. The best time to do it is as soon as you can. And that's true for a lot of things. So I'll let Tapley take away because I know we got more questions are going to pop in.
I might just tease everybody, and because I know everybody wants to hear, how can it help me? And so I'm just pulling from, what is it called? WhatsApp, people from London, and I'm just pulling some recent things that moms and dads have sent to me, just in the past couple weeks. Okay. These are kids who, uh, these are stories, and if you can relate, and then I'll show a couple of slides on kind of what it's doing and how it's doing it, and how TruDOSE actually, is why it works. This is from a doctor. Um, there's many of them coming out of Houston. 13-year-old boy who did 4 rounds of stem cells with no results. Oh no, this is from California. 13-year-old boy who did 4 rounds of stem cells with no results after his first treatment with TruDOSE was fully potty trained, waiting on an update. We have the story about Simon, who is 21 years old, who is from birth, he has cerebral palsy. He's basically his knees and his, he's in a ball. He can't move. He's wheelchair bound. It's been 3 treatments since I think after his first treatment, he was walking with some assistance. After a second treatment, he was basically going up and down the stairs. And now that I know after his third treatment, he's walking with a cane. So that's someone who's lived his whole life wheelchair bound.
He's 20, right?
What's that?
He was 20, I think, right?
Right, 20 or 21.
That's 21 years. Just to let everyone know that's 21 years after the anoxic brain injury, the lack of oxygen in his brain. So that's a long time after. So it shows you how you can really change things.
This is one of another. I was just sent this. Her oldest son. Wow. Okay. This is something we're actually doing a Zoom call with one of the providers because I'm getting an update on just, where are you at? A reunion, if you will. This lady's oldest son, she has 3 of them that were autistic, if that's possible. Her oldest son is normal, no more sensory issues. Her second son is making such strides. He's totally a different child. Another patient out of the same clinic who had 3 treatments is normal. Again, even all of his cousins talk about how grown up he is. There's another person who's 26 from the same clinic. After his first treatment, told his mom he needed more money for a fishing pole. He wanted to go to Walmart to buy one and is speaking now. By the way, on the one lady who is her second son is making such strides, he was completely nonverbal, and it wasn't until it was before he even left the parking lot he was saying his first words, which is not uncommon. So this is from one of our providers who's in Georgia. We treated many pandas and pans cases that day. She said all the pandas kids we treated that day are much calmer. They're all following directions. One of the patients, because it was the one I kind of clung to a little bit, she slept for more than 12 hours. She had better energy. She was happier and calmer. She wasn't hitting her head like the night before, and she didn't. So none of that. The following day, she left the house for the first time in several months. She wanted to go to the park because she told her mom, park, park. And when her sister, she was engaging with her little sister, which she never did. She actually went over to her sister who was having a problem with her toy that broke, and she actually consoled her. She's having no fits, no meltdowns. Here's another one from England. Oh my, and these patients had been doing stem cells, and I'm not anti-stem cell. There's reasons why stem cells work and don't work, and I'll get into that. Here's the last story. Oh my God, for the first time ever, my son sat down at a restaurant. He's understanding his dad's language. He is so happy. So why does it have such a profound effect on autistic kids? Well, let's talk about that.
You want to share your screen again?
Yeah, please.
Yep. Got it. Go ahead.
So, and I won't go, what is inflammation really? What inflammation really is individual events being stuck at a particular event in this process of repair or immune clearance. So this case, I'm showing that it's stuck at step 2, which is what most of us get stuck at. This step 2 is the body's natural stage of inflammation, which is a good thing. But when you get stuck here, for one reason or another, there's a lot of things why, what happens is your body says, I'm going to leave you stuck here until you get me what I need. And so you're stuck in a negative feedback loop of inflammation. And the same thing will happen to, let's say, your immune system, where most of us are stuck in this feedback loop of innate immunity, where you keep fighting the same virus over and over and over. So what, and so here's the other problem too. Is that you take these singular events, which could be, I'm just going to say it, a vaccine injury. You can get an unresolved fracture when you were little, overuse of antibiotics, emotional trauma watching your dad beat your mom as a child. It can be a number of things. But what happens is, when that event happened, what happens to the cells, right? The cells go into a state of distress. Now, when this happens, this is important. When this happens, and this is important because this will answer a lot of questions regarding why stem cells work for these kids and they don't work for these kids. When your cells go into distress like this, they don't know what happened. Obviously, if I got a brain injury, the cells in the brain know that my brain injured, but everything downstream in the body says, hey, the brain's injured. I know I'm supposed to go into a state of lockdown. And so what do your cells do? They throw energy into the bloodstream and they send out reports to say, hey, this is how I was damaged. This is what I need you to get me so I can fix myself. And they also conserve oxygen, which is this dial right here. So because your cells, think of it as like going into a code black at an elementary school. When somebody comes in, the front office doesn't tell you what's going on. They just say code black. Everybody knows in the school to get behind the desk, turn the lights off, and basically go non-existent. That's how your body works. And the cells will stay in this state until the coast is clear. And so your cells are not communicating with one another at this point. All they know is to cut down communication, because if they were to keep communicating, then they would basically be causing a lot of chatter for anything like a virus or a bacteria to basically hijack. And so you have these singular events that stack on top of one another over, a lifetime. They start as simple inflammatory events, and they lead to the more aggressive things related to the peripheral or the more metabolic aspects of our body. And then if they keep progressing over a lifetime, this is where you'll become chronically neurologic, basically, and then what I call mental emotional distress sets in. So you can acquire these things over a lifetime, say like this is somebody with dementia, or you can have something in a violent moment throw you there and accelerate the process, kind of like what happened to my son and probably many of you on this call. But here's the other thing. The emotional standpoint of what these kids and people with Lyme disease are under, this is how your emotional state overlaps that chart. So in the category 1, you can still feel connected, you can still feel grounded, you can still feel love. But as you progress towards, Raynaud's disease, macular degeneration, diabetic neuropathy, cancer is in this group too. This is what happens to our emotional state. If you get over here to category 3, which is where autism is, dementia, ALS, Parkinson's, you're disassociated, you're basically numb from the world. And why? It's because your body is in this sympathetic state of fight or flight. It is simply not concerned with love, which is why you cannot get autistic kids to spontaneously say, I love you. It's not because they can't, it's because their body says, I'm not worried about that right now. I'm worried about self-defense and self-survival. So, and then let me get to right here. So the treatment needs, to me, for the autistic brain and body, does it make sense that your body is in this inflammatory state where no cells are communicating with one another? There's all types of things your cells need differently to fix one another. Some of your cells have been so damaged that they're in this state of hypersleep. This is a term that many of you may know. This is when our cells go into hypersleep. This is how we get age-related diseases at 20 years old. Obviously, there's pathogens, parasites, and toxins. If there is damage to the neurological area, it's a guarantee that there's loss of blood flow and loss of nerve growth. And then you have this emotional sympathetic shift of fight or flight. Not to mention, the longer the cells stay in that state of conserved oxygen, they have hardly any energy, and they're becoming hypoxic, lack of oxygen. Why would they throw energy into the bloodstream? It's because what's the first thing viruses are going to want to do? They're going to want to attack a cell to overtake it, to have enough energy to replicate and basically replicate itself. So as a self-preservation mode, cells throw energy in the bloodstream to make themselves undesirable. So to me, does it make sense that we give our kids stem cells when they're in this state? There's no cells that are going to be welcoming these new cells. You have all these pathogens and parasites just waiting to feed on them. Step 3 of the healing process is basically blood vessel formation. So in that cycle of repair, sorry, to skip back up here, step 3, which is right here, if you can see my screen, this is blood vessel formation right here. This is where, step 1, there is an injury. Step 2, inflammation. Back up? No. Inflammation. It's these last stages right here where the body says, okay, now I have blood flow. I can get oxygen, I can get nutrients, I can get everything to the diseased tissue. Now I'm ready for what's called biomass replacement. It's at the end of the entire repair process. The coast must be clear. So the problem is that, let me get out of this. I guess I can erase this. I'm going to try to erase that. The problem is that most of us are stuck at this, most of us are stuck at this step 2 early in the process. So the question is, does it make sense to give stem cells when the body is stuck right there? So you're basically bypassing a number of events that the body has to undergo and wants to undergo. And this is the reason why that stem cells don't work. It's because they're needed much later in the process. So if the stem cells that do work for kids, it's because they're further along and they don't have as many inflammatory fires. Why do stem cells possibly cause regression? It's because you put them into a body that's parasitically loaded, infectiously loaded, and you basically just gave the viruses and the parasites and the bacteria exactly what they wanted. These cells who are not communicating with other cells that are in the body, these cells are not going to tell these cells, hey, this is what's happening. This is what I need you to do. Let me catch you up to speed with what happened to us. There's none of that happening. So viruses just going to sit there and just go to town. Now, why does this therapy work? It's because, there's the erase. It's because, there. Let me skip to the end. The reason this therapy works is because the platelet is the one thing that actually starts both of your immune system and your repair system to actually begin and activate. It coordinates all the activities of those sequential events, 1, 2, 3, and in cases of like step 3, it has the specific things that that autistic or brain injury kids need, like blood vessels. So platelets have the specific growth factors that give blood vessel formation. Platelets actually have, I'll just highlight a few things, and then I'll stop. Platelets actually have 99% of our body's brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So you can think of platelets actually being created in the body real time based on what your body and your cells need, picking up these things that your cells need to hand it off. But the thing is that the longer we stay with these issues and problems, it creates another problem. Now the platelet has to go deal with that. So there's only so much energy and time that our body can devote to specific injuries before it creates another. And so at some point, the body has to basically assume each injury as a loss leader. And so at a high level, how is this treatment working? Well, I'm going to skip to the two reasons that are really applicable to what I just talked about, and then I'll stop talking. So the thing is that what TruDOSE technology does is it's measuring, the body's platelets at that given time to determine a specific blood draw needed for a specific disease condition. So the dose needed for the hair is not the same for autism. The same for autism is not the same for Lyme. And so think of it as the strength of the dose per mil, okay? Or the amount of cells per mil, that's the dose. Because platelets are so integral in killing these viruses, killing these bacteria, they are the frontline defenders of our body's immune defense, period. They are the frontline go-getters of everything that our cells need when they're in this inflammatory state. They're getting these packages of what these cells need so they don't stay in this state of inflammatory arrest. And what they are also doing is that they are managing the ratios of these cells in the bloodstream to one another that determine our current equilibrium, if that makes sense. And this is not a concept that's foreign. We just don't think about it that way in Western medicine. What do I mean? When we think of health and disease, it's our ability to maintain ratios of cells or ratios of things to one another that determine our current homeostasis. And what I call it the hemodynamic ratio. So think of it like you have your platelets in the bloodstream, which are also the one thing communicating to your white blood cells. They're communicating to your red blood cells. They're also communicating to everything else in the bloodstream that's circulating. So when you put this dose-specific treatment back into the body, again, imagine this right here is this ratio of things right here. Higher levels of this, lower levels of that. This is somebody's current homeostasis. Even though they're sick, this is their current homeostasis. When you put this treatment back into somebody at the right ratio, it's causing everything in your bloodstream to recalibrate. Think of it like tuning things on one of those old school 80s music, boards. And as it's recalibrating things in your bloodstream at the cellular level, it's repairing you on those different things that have been unresolved. So the biggest thing is that you have to know the right ratio of platelets to stick back in the body, because too few will not stimulate a response. Too much could stimulate what I call autonomic overdrive. It's not going to be detrimental, but it's too much for the body to handle. So there's a right amount, and that's what the TruDOSE is, measuring the right amount for you for what you need and for what the condition you're going in for. And so literally we've measured this in the blood. Things are recalibrating in the bloodstream. It's mind-boggling because it's so cool. And the second thing that this is doing, whoops, come on, go for it, is that it's helping the body prioritize what do I need to help first. Whoops, sorry. So so these platelets are being taken out of the body, and for that moment in time, they're not receiving any information from the body and the cells on what they need, because they're right here in this blood bag, waiting to be processed in a centrifuge to be given back to you as part of the therapy. Well, during that time, they're not receiving any information. And so when they go back in the body, it's like they're seeing the entire body for the first time. They're receiving all this information for the first time again of what's needed. So what they're going to do is basically go to all these different events that are unresolved in the body: thyroid, pancreas, endocrine system, musculoskeletal, brain, heart, lungs, in the order of importance that only your body knows. And for the sole goal of walking you backwards from where you're at right now. So it's going to go to the cell right there and give it exactly what it needs to help that particular unresolved event, complete repair, or in this case, complete clearance. And when that event is done repairing or it's done clearing, that particular event re-enters the circadian rhythm. That is why these kids can report sleeping. That's why you can report sleeping. And so the last thing, and so just treatment after treatment, you're just walking yourself back. And so depending on what you have will determine basically how many treatments you'll need. But each treatment, it's rare that a treatment does not do something positive to you, because it's your body figuring it out at the right ratio to go fix things that maybe not even causing you pain, but only your body knows the order in which it needs to heal you. So the greatest, coolest thing that I think about this is for those of us that are in this fight or flight, I'm convinced that you cannot heal the physiological brain, the physiological body, until you address this emotional distress. Until you can get your kid to say, I love you, or engage, I don't see how it's possible, because the emotion has taken over the body. And what we see all the time is this sympathetic shift. And it sometimes happens before you even leave the office, which is why we hear, Mommy, I love you, expressing love for the first time, engaging with their sister, things that they don't do. It's that state of the body not being in fight or flight, and it can now be in this parasympathetic mode where everything can start working again. And the last thing I'll say, and then I'll quit, and this is just, I won't go over this very high level, but there is a theory that I believe, because of the genetic material that exists within the platelet, that it's helping these epigenetic problems. And I can say that because people with mast cell, people with allergies, they're not having them anymore. So at a very high level, getting this treatment is like booting down your body's repair system and immune system computer, and then booting it back up. And in this case, possibly giving it a software update. And then the rest is letting your body heal itself. And then watching the clues that happen after the treatment, so your provider can tweak your what's going on to you, because everything is now more evident and more revealed, whereas before it was a game of, I don't know where do we address first. So I'll stop right there.
I did. Thanks, Tapley. I think one of the key points is that the body is deciding where it wants to heal, right? So we've seen some patients where they're where things will start healing, and they may be like, well, I wanted it to do XYZ, right? I wanted my kid to start speaking, but that might not be the first step in the healing process for them. But I happily mentioned it in one of the slides, how the body sort of starts going through this reverse order in which things appear. So the body heals from top down into out, from the most important systems to the least important systems, in the reverse order in which it appears. That's actually a healing principle, a very fundamental healing principle known as Hering's rules or Hering's law of cure. And this is a therapy that actually follows that, because it is your body healing, and the body is going to decide where and what it wants to heal. So then it's, people are asking, well, can it treat autism? Can it treat ADD? Can it treat allergies? It's not treating actually anything. It's you are treating it. The body itself is treating it. So it's just Tapley has figured out that, okay, this is the best dosage of platelets to give to this person at this particular time, based on the testing and the algorithms and the software, give it back to the body, and the body does that hemodynamic shift where it says, okay, I got to see different things here. We need to build new neurons. We need to turn on the inflammation here, or we need, okay, so that's kind of how it works. And that's why it works for so many things. So hopefully that answers some of the questions.
Yeah, I think I mean, when listening to Tapley at the Autism Healthcare Symposium, it made sense of knowing how, I always tell all my patients that, especially when we're working and everyone wants to come to me and work at detox first. I want to detox heavy metals. I want to detox, and I'm like, how is your gut? Where's the inflammation? Like we need to work with the body and not against the body. And I think also there's many times that I feel stem cells fail too, because at the same time that Tapley was saying, it's going to feed parasites, it's going to feed bacteria and viruses. And if we clear out, some of the best success stories that I've heard are the people who do that foundation step first, working on the gut, working on detox, trying to get the body into some type of a better system or situation that when you do TruDOSE or stem cells, it does take off. It can do amazing things. And talking with Dr. Briner previously, Keegan has done 2 doses, and when we first brought Keegan in, he was vocal stimming like crazy. He was making noises, and it was driving me cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And within 1 treatment, even on the way home, his tics stopped in the car. Like, he was making mouth noises and hand flapping or, slapping his thighs, and by the time we got in the car, like, the whole hour and 45-minute drive home, it was completely it stopped. It hadn't even come back after that. So, it was really nice to see things work pretty significantly and pretty, right away too, which was really cool. The one thing I will say, he was tired. He wasn't tired that so much that day. He was tired the next 2 days. And his body needed to rest, and that's exactly what it's supposed to do. And that's how you heal is you rest and heal at the same time. So I think he didn't go to school the next day. Left him home and, just let him sleep. And, he was back to it. And I asked his reading teacher, I think about 2 weeks later, like, hey, just wanting to see how Keegan was doing. And she was like, he was remembering things, he was reading better. And, even with his glasses, he struggles sometimes, and he was reading so much better, which was amazing to see. So I really think everything always comes, like, everything has always fallen into my lap, and that's kind of, it was just a fluke that I was at that conference. It was a fluke that the one time I went to one of the conferences, Tapley was speaking, and it was just like that perfect, storm for me always. So I do appreciate both of you. Thank you so much for coming. I know people have a ton of questions, and I definitely want to be able to answer some people's questions. Tapley, I did put in the chat of the location for some of the TruDOSE areas, but are there other ones? I know some people are asking for Canada, the UK, or are there ones that are maybe not listed on the website?
Yeah, I want to give those with the UK. I don't want to share too much now, but that UK could be coming in the future, like in the near future. And we have a lot of people from the UK travel over from the UK to the States, and I mean, like I said, one of the things I just read was from the UK, but I'll be making some trips over there here in the next actually couple weeks. So, stay tuned. So I was going to say, if you can give everybody the TruDOSEtherapy.com website, and if you can say, hey, the patient inquiry, I'm in the UK, please keep me posted. That will trigger for us to kind of stay in touch, because obviously there's some things we probably need to navigate and figure out with the UK that we don't know about just yet.
Yeah. I think the cool thing though about TruDOSE too is it's not like you need stem cell, like you're just you. Like some medical equipment too, but like you don't need all the extra hoopla stuff. Like it's literally just you, which I think is really cool. So it cuts out a lot of that too. And somebody says Canada, please. Is Canada on that list, or maybe some places are close to Canada?
It's Canada's tough just because they're I don't know. We're it's not that we're having a tough time punching through Canada. It's more of just
Yeah.
there's a couple little layers that makes it a bit more difficult.
Yeah.
I'd say hop on a plane, come down to the US, or drive down. We're close enough. We get patients from
Yeah,
Canada.
we have Dr. Briner over here in the Northeast, or the I guess the eastern side, and we now have, I mean, a ton of clinics that are coming on board in the West Coast. I think that's Vancouver, right? In that Vancouver.
Right, yeah, the upper west. So, and I think some people also I saw wanted to know about the process. I think that's important to know how often we do it, and just like any contraindications, and is any how does it work with other biomedical therapies? I mean, I'm a naturopathic doctor. We very much work with a lot of other biomedical therapies, so I can say unequivocally that TruDOSE works very well with them, as long as you're using therapies that will help heal the body and not suppress. And there are a few things that we don't do after TruDOSE, like take anti-inflammatories or do things that are going to blunt this process that takes the body through and completes its inflammatory condition that it wants to heal. But um, you actually have some slides. I think you'd better if you put them up, just actually they can see
Okay.
visually, maybe just like the process, because I think that's always easier. It's really easy. I'll just let you know from aspect of the kids that come in. They'll come in. We usually kind of have them prep, right? I think this is Keegan as well. I'll put a little numbing cream on his arm, get him in a room. We do you have to do a blood sample first, happily show you. And then everything else is uh, done pretty easily. We just need to have venous access to their, to a vein in the arm.
Greer, after I show this, maybe you can get to a lot of the questions. We can just go through them because we don't want to just fire them at both of us.
You got it. Yeah, I gave you your host again so you could share whatever you need.
Okay, here we go here. So you um you walk in the door, and then you'll have just a few drops sampled from your blood. And well, I'll get to that in a minute. How about that? This is how you create PRP, or really any stem cell therapy, period. You have to take a volume of blood or a volume of cells, suspended in a fluid, and you have to process it in a centrifuge. These things are designed to separate based on the cellular weight. Okay, so everything that's heavy will fall to the bottom. So in this case, you have your red blood cells that fall to the bottom, and you have everything else that floats to the top. You take that everything else and you put it over here, and you process it again, and you centrifuge it again, for a few minutes. And again, the next heaviest thing will fall to the bottom. So in this case, inside the blood, the next heaviest thing will be the platelets. And stem cells, it'll be your stem cells, depending on if it's umbilical cord, bone marrow derived, hematopoietic, it doesn't matter. Now, um, uh, with the TruDOSE process, here's how it's different. Instead of you walking into somebody's office and let's say it's stem cells, they're going to open a vial, give you this. For the next person who's got a different condition, open the same vial, give you that. And so open the same vial, same dose, same dose, same dose. Or if it's a platelet-rich plasma therapy, in this example, let's say if we all had a knee condition and we went to an office, the same office, to get our knee treated. What would happen today if they did not have the TruDOSE is they would take maybe 10 mils of blood from each one of us, just like doing a lab draw. Maybe, and then they would process it in a centrifuge, just like I showed you, to separate the red blood cells and the plasma. And maybe they might take 30 mils of blood. But the point is, from each one of us, there's over 100 or so people on this call. They would take 30 mils of blood from each one of us, process it in a centrifuge, and then basically inject it back into our knee. So the question I asked was, does it make sense that we draw the same amount of blood from each one of us, considering the fact that we're all biologically different and we're coming in for different disease conditions? With TruDOSE, what you do is you walk into an office, and whether it's a finger stick or for young kids, they'll just access the IV and take a couple drops of blood from the IV, and they'll analyze that. All you're analyzing is just the blood platelets. Now, platelets, unbeknownst to conventional wisdom, on my end, tell us a whole lot of things because I have a lot of data. And platelets impact healing and non-healing. So I take that platelet measurement and I import it into this software that I told you was created. And that software has all the metrics and analytics to determine one thing: how much blood do I draw from each one of us on this call? And we all have a knee condition, to put in that centrifuge to process to eventually inject into our knee. So for one of us, it might be 36 mils of blood. For somebody else, it might be 225. For somebody else, it might be 101. But we're all going to get that specific patient blood draw for the specific condition, meant for just us. And so when you do it, so that's really the difference in TruDOSE, is measuring what is for you, for what you're dealing with, to get a specific blood draw, and using the one thing that's responsible for really your frontline defense and immune system, and that's your platelets. So the if you don't go to an office that has TruDOSE, basically they're just shooting in the dark. So I always say, I didn't create PRP. I just made the process and more reproducible by putting a sniper scope on top of the gun and making sure that treatments are personalized. And then it took me a couple of years to figure out the dose to outcome response for very serious untreatable conditions. And that's really how people know us now, is not the technology, not the software. It's the therapy that's actually using something as simple as your own blood, that's very easy to get, and doing it back at the right ratio. Because if you don't do it at the right ratio, nothing's going to happen. If you do too much, then too much will happen. Very similar, like dumping too much fertilizer on your lawn. It'll burn it. Too little won't even do anything. Just the right amount will make it very green. It's the same analogy.
Yeah.
So you just as a recap, so you come into the clinic, you're getting like an IV catheter line, right? If you're getting like an IV blood draw, we're getting a sample of the blood. That sample then gets tested, and a platelet counter that's attached to Tapley's software system. And then we know, okay, for your son, for your daughter, or for yourself, this is what we're trying to treat, and how much blood do I have to get? We take the blood out, that volume blood out, it gets processed through the centrifugation process that you just saw. We find then it actually gets tested again. I think that's very important to know. We don't just say, okay, that's good, hopefully we got it, but we actually test it a second time to make sure we got that target therapeutic dosage, right? That the software said you need to have 3 billion whatever platelets per cc. Did we get it? If we didn't, we actually got to maybe go get more platelets or more blood. So it's actually really very individualized, very accurate. And then it gets infused back into the patient right through the same line that's in there. So there's no more ouchies or boo-boos. They only need one stick. And that's pretty much it. And we just, have them sit there for a little while and make sure everything's going well. And then like you said, like, right, your son, Greer was back. Keegan was driving home, right? Already after.
Yeah, no more stims. Yeah, that's important. And I know some people are like, someone was asking like how accurate the software is because they're worried that there's not going to be too much. And it was really interesting because Tapley was actually in your clinic, but Tapley, you're not from Connecticut. You flew in to do the TruDOSE at Reiner's clinic, correct? Oh, wait, you did.
Yes, I was, you probably caught me at a time that we were training and doing some implementation, but I'm not physically there for all treatments.
Right. Yeah, no. But it was cool to see him there, but that's why he has the training. That's why he has the specific areas. It's like any type of dosing. These practitioners are going to check and recheck to make sure, and they know by now, like, obviously if a 70-pound kid came in and the computer spit out something crazy, they're going to know it's not correct. I mean, it's not anything that I felt insecure about, or I was worried that he was going to get too much or not enough. I was very, everyone is on point about this type of treatment because it's important to get it right every single time. So there's not anything that I would be worried about if you're worried about getting too much or not enough. Like, they're going to make sure it is exactly what your child needs.
I think there are questions about cost, that obviously may vary depending on the area of the country you're in. So we're about, depending, the beginning it's about 1,800 and maybe somewhere in that 1,600 range. And I think the prices can be a little higher or lower depending on where you are in the country. But that's approximately the range. So it's obviously a lot less expensive than stem cell therapy, which
Yeah, I was actually kind of shocked of how, I don't want to say cheap, like, but compared to stem cells, which is like $20,000. And if you're doing, 3 to 4 doses of this at 1,500 or 1,800 a piece, like that was very reasonably cost, I thought, to do. And yes, I think we did talk about, you could do 1 dose and see how it goes. And then if it is advised to do at least 4 most of the time, correct? Especially for autism.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think they there was another question that came up was, well, how often does someone get treated and how many doses? And so Tavli, you can speak to what you've seen across, but I think we're saying somewhere between 8 and 12 weeks, you're doing another TruDOSE. So you're not doing it too soon, right? You don't want to do it too soon. And Tavli will explain why that is.
Yeah, because someone just asked, like, how long, because we were told at least, I think, 6 weeks in between each dose. Am I correct? Somewhere around that.
It just depends. We're dealing with autism, things that are really complex. There's a lot of things that are going to be recalibrated.
Mhm.
And you need to give, and what we've seen, and this is just data collection and learning and seeing what is the ideal point that would answer everybody's questions of, like, at what point can I worry that I'm not going to go backwards? Really, that's what we want to know. Because to say that I can tell you exactly how many treatments you need for 2 people that have Lyme disease, I can't tell you that, because 2 people have 2 completely different outcome expectations of what they think success is like. One person just wants to get out of bed. The other person wants to cure themselves, or I don't want to say cure, wants to heal themselves as much as possible. So it's difficult to satisfy that question as a blanket statement. Here's what I can tell you. The 4 treatment mark is what we've found, that at every 8 to 12 weeks, because that's the time that your cells and everything in your body are starting to kind of reach this new homeostasis point. Healing and repair and all this recalibration starts to level off. That's about 8 to 12 weeks. And in the 4th treatment, the next 8 weeks later, so it's about over the course of a year, there's enough healing distance between you and your condition that the likelihood of you potentially metabolically relapsing is greatly minimized. And your supplement intake is radically changed. The majority of people will go from 60 supplements down to 2 to none. Your medications you're taking, you don't, I don't want to say get hot mics, but you probably won't need them anymore. So your medical spend greatly reduces. And regarding the price, I went around to all the clinics about 2 years ago and said, we cannot be doing this if the goal is to help humanity. This is the price this is how much that you can't go below. And this is the price that I don't want you to go above. And I would say within reason, 99% of all the clinics, are great people, which is why we don't let everybody have this. And they fall right in, and they follow that kind of, recipe, because, we don't want to make this too unaffordable to where we can't help anybody who needs more treatments. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Somebody did ask Tapley about your son, how he's doing now after the TruDOSE infusion for your son.
I tell people that my son is probably about 90 to 95% healed.
Yeah.
I guess I'm being a little critical.
I feel the same way. I mean, with Keegan, I'm the same way. I hear you.
I mean, it's my son wasn't even the first autistic kid that we treated. He inspired a lot of it, but he wasn't even the first kid. You know, just like many autistic moms, you don't want that fear of going backwards. And my wife was the same way. So it had to take many kind of unbelievable, you got to be kidding me stories to finally he was treated. Um, but so I would say that, but she had done a lot of work up until that point, like you were talking about earlier, which this does not take the place of that work. This actually amplifies that work. It amplifies those modalities. And it also amplifies what you don't need because the body starts working and it helps the provider say, oh, you don't need this anymore. So, all right, I'm gonna force you guys to go to the questions because they're stacking up.
Yeah, no, we're going through them, we're answering them, but somebody did ask, this is actually a really good question. What about a girl who, with autism who is very close to starting her cycle for the first time? Will that affect her negatively in her menstrual cycle?
No, no, it won't. The only thing that it'll do, uh, my opinion, most of these, when you're in fight or flight, most of these things in your body start to accelerate. When you're injured, it's like you get your period when you're 11, when you're 10, when you shouldn't get it. It's because your body is accelerating because it can't expect what it doesn't know.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is that with it's not going to affect it. It'll actually probably lessen the anxiety and calm those kind of times down.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of what I was thinking. Somebody asked if this treatment is required for life, or like could you do the 4 doses possibly that's required and then kind of see. I mean, we don't know how the future is going to go. So I would say you might need it again in your lifetime because I feel like this is going to continue to expand. So like, if something happens to you in the future, you might want to do it again. So
Yeah, I can tell you the majority of people that have these conditions that's it's you wish you never had, um, because you're getting off medications, you're getting off supplements, your medical spend goes down, you don't realize it, that what we've seen is about 80, I think it's 3 or 4% of the people continue to do this every 3 months. Kids are maybe a little bit different, and you can probably do it every 6 months. Obviously money is a factor and finances. So what most people continue to do this as a preventative because they don't want to go back to where they were. The majority of people, what you're talking about, for whatever reason that is impacting their personal life, that says, hey, we gotta, when can we do this? At a bare minimum, the second you see symptoms arise, go get it.
yeah.
If you want to do it as a maintenance, I would say the bare minimum is every 6 months, simply because we're not getting away from planet Earth, and we're not getting away from things that are going to basically, designed to make us in an inflammatory state, me included.
Yeah. Someone did ask a really good question. Can you talk about, I think this person is just still a little nervous with getting too much. So what would be the dangers if you did get too much of your own platelets?
It's not going to hurt you. It's just too much Herx response, too much detoxing. It's think of like turning the body on, that the body's not working, and then all of a sudden you turn it on. You start detoxing crazy. You start moving things in your lymphatic. It's just you could have it could cause signs, and if you have neurological damage, it can have too much increased pain, because when you turn the nervous system back on, think about sitting on your foot for 30 minutes. It's asleep. When you get off of it, it stings, right? If you have too much, it could just have too much increased pain because it's turning too much of the nervous system back on. And so healing becomes painful. So if we don't have to make it like that, there's no reason to make it like that. But it's not going to do anything detrimental.
Yeah. Minimum age for treatment.
I know that as young as 2 has been done and as old as 98.
I guess you have to just sit. You have to be able to sit for the IV. That's pretty much what it
Well,
comes.
you know, you have to get that access. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
There's a question here, how would we know the best action plan for the child? Is it based on medical history? You can't think of this as like, we've been diagnosed with this, we've been diagnosed with that, because really diagnoses are just the way that we communicate with one another based on the symptoms that we're observing. So you take away a couple of symptoms out of MS, you could very easily say it's Parkinson's. You could very easily say it's dementia if you add a couple more. I'm just kind of generalizing, but so what you're really looking at is the symptoms that you're dealing with at that particular time. And so you're dealing with that because that's the most evident thing. Typically, you're most of it's going to be the neurological issue that's happening at the time. So, and which is a different call, Zoom call. But if you walk in with joint pain, it's not joint pain. It's most likely something that's brain fog and loss of cognition. That's the symptom you would go for. That's the more important of the two.
Perfect. If there's a condition caused by a genetic disorder, could this still be effective for somebody?
That's why I was answering the question. Again, there was the last slide I talked about. It's really more of my theory, but on how this affects epigenetics. The short answer is yes. I don't want to say I have conclusive data points to really etch that in stone. But I can say that things that are epigenetic related or genetic related, we've seen simply reverse, regardless of the condition. Um, um, so I would suspect yes. I don't know about chromosomal abnormalities. I can't really speak intelligently about that. But certain genetic things, I can say either yes or no.
Yeah, that's what I kind of, no worries. All right, I'm going to take a couple more questions because I want to be respectful of Dr. Briner and Tapley's time. And I do very much appreciate, but if I didn't get to your question or you're still wondering, you can always reach out to me and I'm happy to answer questions, or if I have to pass them along, I definitely will. Someone asked with hyperthyroidism, could it help with somebody with hyperthyroid?
Yes, hyper and hypo. Yes. Brenner, and yeah, I know you've seen some cases.
Yeah, I mean, people's hormones will tend to kind of start balancing out, right? And on all aspects. So hyperthyroidism a lot of times is like an autoimmune because you're excessive. It's outputting unless you got some growth or something there that's causing that, and that should be checked out,
Yeah.
obviously beforehand by an endocrinologist.
But the thing is that don't walk in with the expectation that I want my thyroid to be normalized, because in the order of importance of how the body heals itself like a circuit, and the thyroid could be fifth in the chain that it deems important. So if you take a thyroid medication when four things prior to it need to be addressed, you're basically overloading the circuit. Whereas this will kind of address those things that will make the thyroid turn back on. So it may be the eighth thing that you need. So it may be the second treatment until your thyroid starts to kind of get fixed. So don't walk in with the expectation that I have Hashimoto's and I want that to be fixed. Walk in with the expectation of, what is causing the Hashimoto's, and then kind of be aware of what's being repaired then, because eventually the thyroid will get it.
Right.
But yeah.
Somebody did ask, did you, this is actually kind of interesting. Did you create the artificial intelligence that is used in tandem with other software, or did you partner with a company to create your software, I guess, for the TruDOSE, or is that all in your head?
It's all in my head.
I was gonna say, yeah. If anyone doesn't know, Holland is an extremely intelligent person. Like his brain works very differently than most people that I've met, and the way that you explained it, especially at the symposium, just you can tell that this was basically literally almost like a message from God for you, where it was just like, this is what you needed to do. I'm going to teach you how to do it, even though you have no experience or understanding of it, but here you go. So yeah, that's
I'll tell you a little insight here. Uh, uh, so one of the things that some people say, well, what about for people who just don't have any issues, right? And they want to do TruDOSE, is it going to help? And we're seeing people who are just trying to get kind of peak performers, and they're feeling like their brain is back to where it was in their earlier years, and so I did one time. I did a little thing with Tapley, is I actually I measured his brain. I did an EEG. I did evoked response potential testing, and I wanted to see, okay, what is it looking like? Because he said he used to have ADD, and he doesn't really take that medications anymore, since he was doing TruDOSE on himself. So I said, let me see what your brain's looking like. So I popped the cranium off. I didn't actually take his head off, but do the electrodes on the EEG, and I looked there, and I was like, that's looking pretty good. I said, I don't know if you got ADD, but we can always tweak things. And then I looked at the speed of his brain, how quickly he has reaction, and he was the fastest we've ever measured. So his brain has been TruDOSE like to the max, So he gets so I'm making him feel too important. I know.
But
Yes.
no, that's really funny. I love that story. That's amazing.
In all seriousness, I know some people that work for me and advise me, say, you got to stay away from how this started. I don't really care, because that is the story of how this started, and I can't really take all the credit. And regarding kind of, listen, all of you moms and dads on this call have this intuition, and you can think things logically, and that's really all you need to do. You need to logically think through that. The body is pretty simple. If it doesn't logically make sense, if it's not passing the gut check, it's probably something you need to run from. I can't say that that's all I did. I just logically put this together, and everything else was just a little help from up above. But you have this capability, and the best thing I can tell you to do is that trust your mom and dad's intuition. It's you don't have to have medical understanding to say that I can read, and this does or does not make sense to me. So trust it. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Agreed. Amen. Well, on that note, I think that's a great ending. I want to thank everybody for joining us and coming with us. Like I said, if I didn't get to your question or it was missed, please don't hesitate to reach back out. Yes, I recorded this. I will be sending that out probably Friday in an email, so you can definitely catch the replay. I want to thank. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Brian.
I just want to make sure that I can because I know some people had questions and, about with our clinic where we are. We're in Fairfield, Connecticut, wholebodymed.com. And I just put it here in the chat. I haven't been able to keep up with the chats. So if you want, the phone number's there, the website's there, so you can ask, you can always call the office, ask more questions if you had. And we are doing TruDOSE in a few weeks again. We do them times in groups, and we just have them, people get a little clearance beforehand, and then you come on in, and who knows, maybe we'll get Tapley out again to bring him back.
It was funny just to see him when I turned the corner and he was there. I was like, oh, hey, surprise.
Real quick, there was I'm just scanning. I know I could do this all night. I love.
I was answering a lot of questions too to try to keep up.
There's one that says, I'm trying to understand which clinic to go to. Now, doctor, if this is a primarily autism call, that's what I've kind of geared towards, kind of like my answers. You can go to TruDOSEtherapy.com and see where all the locations are, and all the providers are awesome. But if you're going to talk about metabolic things and kids, obviously Dr. Breiner's facility can help both of those. If you're going to talk about kids, if you can't go to Dr. Breiner's because you live on the West Coast or whatever, then there's only a couple providers that I would recommend that you go to, because they have the expertise to look at them biomedically, look at them, and nutritionally, testing all the stuff that you need. So don't just go to the website and say TruDOSE is close to me and say Kansas, I'm going to go here. Do not do that. If you're obviously Dr. Briner, who's in New York, we have a facility in Houston. This is for kids. I'm talking about for pediatrics. For Houston, we have one now in Georgia. We have one in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And we have two in California, Core Health and Dr. Rios. Those are the ones that and then one in Ojai, California, so that's 3. Those are the ones I would recommend. Take that back, one more. In Lincoln, Nebraska. Those are the ones I would recommend if it's kids. If it's not, just please don't go to the other facilities because, they don't have all the tools you need.
Yeah. And again, you can reach out to me. And you can reach out to TruDOSE and Dr. Briner, and everyone will help. Can you list them? I have this recorded, so I'll send that out in the recording if you need to. Oh, someone just asked which location in Georgia you said? Do you know, Tapley? The one in Georgia? Did you say one in Georgia?
Yeah, she's in Noonan,
Georgia.
Georgia. It's like outside of Atlanta, not too far.
And someone said I don't see one in Houston.
Oh man, it's one of our best. If
Angie, right?
yeah, if let me sometimes some things magically always happen to our website. Let me go check it and make sure that everybody's there is supposed to be there. And
we can maybe Tapley, would that be okay if we work on a quick list that I can send out?
yeah,
Those
100%.
places? Yeah, I think
Yep.
that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for coming. I appreciate it. I appreciate Tapley. I appreciate Dr. Briner for dealing with me and my questions and talking to me and everything. I hope you guys, there's nothing in Huntington right now, Amanda. That's why I go to Dr. Briner. The one in Huntington is they upcharged an excessive amount and they don't really specialize in kids. So that's why I go to Dr. Briner in Connecticut. But yeah, like, oh, this is amazing, life-changing. Well, thank you, Ariella. I appreciate that. I try to do these things so that we can get more information out there for our kiddos, even if it's not mainstream and even if it's not really made to the public yet, because I think this is important information for all parents to have as a tool belt. Yeah, Tapley, what is it?
I totally forgot the one in Kentucky. Totally forgot. So I'll get that list.
We'll make a list. And I'll send out the
You just
list.
get Greer the list. She'll be able to put it together in a nice
We'll put it together. We'll make it. We'll figure it out. But thank you, everybody. I hope you guys have a great night, and I hope you guys look into TruDOSE and let me know how it goes.